Hey guys, so today I'm going to be giving you a small guide on magic weapons. So I will be talking about staves. I'll be talking about wands, and I'll be talking about things like damage, what bosses, what weapons to use for what situations, and things like that. So let's get this started. So guys, for you to get a perspective of what I'm going to be talking about, you need to understand the cast speeds of each weapon. You need to be able to understand what the damage output of each weapon is. So the first thing, staves, they have a 3.6 second cast time between each spell. So yeah, wands and a shield have 2.4 seconds, and a wand plus an offhand book, orb or ankh has a cast time of 1.2 seconds. Then the damage output for staves is 100%, and wands is it has an invisible nerf which is not shown in the stats, but it gives 40% damage from a test that I did. So I went to training dummies and I tested the maximum hit of a staff and a maximum hit of a wand, and then I just compared like how much percentage that was. So from the cast times and the damage output of each weapon, we can determine how much damage per second each type of style of magic weapon, how much damage they can give. So staves give 100% damage, wands plus something like a shield gives 55% damage, and wands plus a offhand orb, ankh or book gives 110% damage. So wands and offhand is the best damage per second, whereas staves is the second best, and a wand plus a shield is the third best. But because they use the shield, it has a defense bonus, so you just got to keep that in mind. So even though staves give 100% damage and wands give 40% damage, which is an invisible boost to damage, staves do actually not give directly any damage. So magic weapons do not give damage. The spells themselves give the damage. So for example, a chaotic staff gives 0 damage, but fire surge spell gives 768 damage. So as you can see, the staves, you can't determine which staff you're going to use based on the damage. It's based on other stats, not damage. So you got to choose the spell for the damage. So for example, if you want to use fire surge, that gives 768 damage. You can use something like ancient magic, like a barrage spell, which actually gives a lot more damage. It gives I think 800 and 60 damage. So it might be a good idea to choose ancient spells over the normal prevalent. So yeah. So now I'm going to be giving you some of the advantages to using staves. So the first thing is that they are easy to obtain because they have been in the game for a very long time, and the high level equipment is very easy to obtain compared to the wands, for example, which have just been introduced into the game. Also, staves are very cheap to use because they only use the runes. Compared to a wand, for example, a wand can use 2 to 3 times as many runes as a staff can for the same approximate type of damage. So yeah. Also, staves are good for PvP. They are a good PvP kill weapon, so they can get the final blow, and because they hit so high, it might be a good idea. Also, staves are very good with abilities. Because the abilities usually have a cooldown. The most basic ability has a 3-second cooldown, and because the staff takes 3.6 seconds to cast each spell, you're able to cast a ability on every single cast. Whereas on the wand, because it hits so often, you will be hitting like an auto attack sometimes, instead of hitting an ability every single time. So the staff has the advantage that you can use an ability on every single cast. Also, I would say that in some respects, a staff is more fun because you can see the high numbers, and you know, some people like that kind of thing. So yeah. So now I'm going to give you the disadvantages of using a staff. Unfortunately, because they hit so very infrequently at 3.6 seconds per cast, the damage per second, or DPS, is very unreliable. So you could be hitting a 500 and then suddenly be hitting a 3000. So you don't really know what's going to happen. Like for a wand, it's much more reliable because you're going to be hitting more often. So you could be hitting like a 500 and then a 1000, but at the end of the day it's going to be very similar, like what damage you're going to be doing. Also, it might be a bit boring because the slow hits they're so slow. They're like, you don't realize how slow 3.6 seconds is, but sometimes it's a bit, you know, boring. Also, you're unable to protect yourself with a shield, so you won't be able to use a secondary. So that might be a disadvantage for some people that want to kill something like Nex or some boss which requires high defense. So now I wanted to show you the advantages of using a wand over a staff. So the first thing is that you can use an offhand book, orb, ank, or shield. So you can either choose between an offensive advantage or a defensive advantage. So this is great because the staff is like the in-between. So it's very offensive, but at the same time it's not as offensive as a wand could be, or how defensive a wand could be. So it gives you a choice. Also, because the DPS, or damage per second, is very reliable, because you hit 3 times in the same time, a staff hits 1 time. So this gives a much more reliable DPS, and it allows you to reliably kill your enemies, like pretty much knowing that it's going to take a certain amount of time. So yeah. Also, it's good for things like Slayer and general training on low level creatures, for the reasons I gave just a second ago. So yeah. So now I want to talk about the disadvantages of using wands. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is the rune cost. So because you're casting at 2 to 3 times the speed of a staff, you'll be using 2 to 3 times more runes. So this means that the cost of using the runes is going to go up drastically. Fortunately, because Jagex have made rune cost far cheaper, so there's no use for death runes or blood runes in the normal spellbook anyway. This means that the cost to cast the spell is much cheaper than it usually is, but currently the price of these runes is going up, so it's still quite expensive. So I pay approximately 100 GP per staff spell. So if you use a wand, this could be going up to 300. So yeah, you'll be paying a lot more for using a wand. Also, high level wands are very hard to obtain, and they're very expensive at the moment. So this might change in the future, but currently things like the Aram's wand, it's very hard to obtain. Imagine going to Barrows and trying to get one item. There I think are 30 items in Barrows, and the chances of getting one item is 1 in 16. So imagine 1 in 16 times 30 with a chance of getting that item. It's probably like 1 in 2,000 chance to get one. So it's very hard to find a wand at the moment because of this, and also things like the Virtus wand are not many people do next anymore because the prices of items are going down. So getting those items as well is going to be hard to obtain. So again, the price of Virtus wand at the moment I think I've heard it is around 200 million GP, so it's going to be very hard to find those items. Personally, I have a Griffolic wand. It's a level 60 wand. It's the best I could get because the Arams and the Virtus wand are very rare and they're too expensive at the moment, in my personal opinion, and I don't see a purpose. I don't see them being overly better than staves, so I don't really see a point in getting a wand at the moment. So yeah. Also, wands are a little bit less accurate than staves in general. The only situation where the accuracy is actually better for a wand is if you use a Virtus wand with a Ankh, which actually, like the Virtus wand gives 720 accuracy and the Ankh gives 100 accuracy, which totals 820 accuracy, which is compared to a staff such as a chaotic staff, which has a requirement of level 80 as well and has an accuracy of 800. So you can see the accuracy is very similar there, but in most situations staves generally have better accuracy. So yeah. Also, because wands cast so fast, using ability with it might be difficult, because like not on every cast you'll be able to do maybe 2 abilities out of 3, so you might not be able to use abilities all the time. It could be a good use with momentum, but yeah. So anyway, let's go on to the next topic. Okay, so now that we have determined what items are good to use and like what damage they do, how long it takes to cast each spell with each weapon and things like that, now we can determine what situations you should use each type of different setup. So yeah. So for high hitting bosses that hit you very often, I would suggest using a defensive setup. So this includes a wand plus a shield. So for example, if you're going to Nax, I would probably suggest that you bring a wand of some kind and a arcane shield or something like that, because you're gonna need the defense more than you're gonna need the attack. And even though the damage you're going to be doing is only 50%, 55% of what the staff would do, I think the defensive ability is much more important than the offensive. But then if you have a situation where you're fighting low hitting monsters such as Slayer creatures, so I would suggest for that situation to use the highest DPS available to you. So this includes a 1 plus a book. So yeah, it might be an idea if you want to save money. It might also be an option to use the staff in this situation, as it still does 100% damage and it saves 3 times the runes. So the next thing is high level bosses who don't hit high or often. So this includes bosses such as Bandos. I would probably suggest that you use a staff because they don't hit very often, but at the same time you don't want to. You want a weapon that is pretty accurate as well, because bosses usually have high defense, and in a situation where you don't get hit very often, you don't really need a shield, but you do need to hit through their defense, so you need something like a staff because they have higher accuracy, which allows you to hit more often. So the next one is, if you want to save money, I would suggest using a staff, because if you use a wand, you're gonna be going through 3 times as many runes if you use the highest DPS setup. So I would probably suggest using a staff if you want to save money. And in PVM, I would suggest using a staff. You could potentially use a wand just to get them down to low health, and then using a staff as the kill weapon. However, the staff is probably a good option for an overall good PvP weapon. So yeah.